Today we are going to read the true story about a famous artist named Henri Matisse. The story is called Matisse, the King of Color. Monique climbed the steep hill and up some long steps to a huge building high above the town. The sign by the door said, Henri Matisse. It was like she had stepped into a multicolored jungle. Birds were flying from room to room, and plants grew as tall as trees. "Hello," called a small voice. "Is that the night nurse?" "Hello, Mr. Matisse," said Monique. "I have come to look after you." The old artist had a silver beard and twinkly glasses. He was recovering from a big operation. The doctors thought he would never paint again. "I feel a little better," he said, "but I'd like you to read to me." So Monique chose a book. She read for a long time. Matisse didn't sleep, but Monique did. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. "This is my very first job." Matisse just smiled. "Look, I made a drawing of you." Then Matisse told her about his adventures in different lands, diving in tropical lagoons and rowing on blue-green seas. And soon Monique forgot it was night outside. Matisse loved music. Matisse loved flowers. Matisse loved children too. He tied chalk to a long stick so that he could draw his grandchildren on the ceiling. "They keep me company when I can't sleep," he said. "I don't think your parents would like it if you drew on your ceiling." But the thing Matisse loved most of all was color. He was always trying to find ways to make his paintings brighter and brighter. Some people called him the wild beast because his colors were so crazy. Every evening, Monique climbed the hill to the jungle studio. Monique helped Matisse to sit up and paint, and they became good friends. Matisse made lots of pictures of Monique in a beautiful silk dress, with a mandolin on a chair, and all his work was full of joy. "There's enough sadness in the world," he would say. And these are real paintings and drawings that Matisse made of his friend Monique. "Look how much better I am," said Matisse one day. "It's like having a new life. Thank you for looking after me, Monique." "You've been like a grandfather to me," said Monique. Then she packed up her bag and walked slowly out of the jungle room. She thought she would never see Matisse again. Monique went to school, far away in the mountains. But it was not an ordinary school. Everybody dressed in black and white. There were no colors at all. Monique's school was a school for nuns. Life was very hard, and the nuns were so poor they didn't even have a proper chapel. They had to say their prayers in a cold and leaky garage. When the old nuns heard that Monique had been a nurse, they gave her a bicycle and sent her to look after people who weren't well. Every day, Monique cycled along the lane past a big, empty house. The house had views right across the mountains to the sea. It was called The Dream. One afternoon in June, Monique saw that a new owner was moving into The Dream. The new owner loved birds. The new owner loved cats. The new owner was Henri Matisse. Matisse was delighted to see his friend Monique again. "You are all black and white," he teased, "but I have found a way to be more colorful than ever. Look, I'll show you. First, I put on some music. Jazz is best. Now I shall paint some big sheets of paper as bright as I can." Then, with hands as quick as butterflies, Matisse cut 100 dancing shapes, and soon they were pinned up on every wall of the dream. "I have been painting too," said Monique shyly. She showed Matisse a tiny picture. It was a design for a stained glass window. We could have this made with real stained glass. As high as this room, said Matisse. But Monique laughed. The nuns don't even have a chapel. You can't put stained glass windows on a garage. It was nearly dark when Monique ran home. The nuns would be worried. And look, Monique was covered with splashes of color. Come back soon, laughed Matisse. Late in the night, the lights burned in the dream house. Matisse was working on an idea. The next time Monique came, she found Matisse very excited. Monique, you have been so kind to me. This is my idea. I am going to build a chapel up here in the mountains, not a dark, gloomy church. My chapel will be a house of color. It will be my present for you. Matisse asked Monique to build a model like a big doll's house. Now all I have to do is fill your box with my imagination. Matisse made wonderful drawings for the chapel walls. He even designed colorful robes for the priests to wear. We do not want a chapel built by a wild beast, grumbled some old nuns. The chapel took a very long time. Matisse became tired. He asked the carpenter to put wheels on his bed and a tray for his paints. Matisse called it his taxi bed. At last, the workmen began to put up the chapel walls. Their bangs and shouts echoed through the mountains. The chapel had a bright blue roof and a golden bell on a curly tower. This will be more like a circus than a chapel, said one old nun. One gray day, when everything was nearly finished, Monique pushed Matisse along the lane to look inside. Monique was surprised. Everything seemed to be shiny white. It didn't look like a house of color at all. Perhaps the nuns had won. The chapel was black and white, just like their clothes. But the king of color had one more trick to play. He had been working away in his studio designing windows for the chapel, using colored paper to cut out blue and green shapes of colored light. 17 stained glass windows were made in the factory exactly as Matisse planned. A big truck climbed slowly up the mountain and the workmen lifted them carefully into place. Then they drove back down the mountain and the chapel was finished. Monique got up early. It was her turn to wake up the others, and today it was a very special day. It was the opening of the Matisse chapel. There would be lots of visitors, and Monique wanted everything to be ready. She crept outside. The chapel was dark and quiet. Then something amazing happened. The morning sun rose over the mountains, and a bright ray of sunlight fell across the darkened windows. Very slowly, the room began to fill with colored light. It crept across the floor and onto the white walls. Then, just like a magic painting, the black and white world filled with beautiful colors. And here is a picture of the real chapel that is still there today. Monique felt as if she was floating in a multicolored sea. Matisse was painting with light. Monique stood still for a moment. Then she went to wake the others. High on the blue roof, the golden bell began to chime. It echoed across the mountains to the sea. And as the sunlight filled his bedroom, Matisse heard the sound and he smiled. Now I can rest, said the king of color. So again, boys and girls, that was a true story about the artist named Henri Matisse and how he loved painting, but soon, because he was getting sick, he started to use scissors and paper and glue. So today we are going to make a project that uses colorful paper and scissors and glue. So let's get started. You'll need to find some colorful pieces of paper, And what we're going to do is start to cut. Now, sometimes it might be easier to draw with a pencil on your paper and then cut it out. But if you can just cut like this, you can do that too. So here's a good way to experiment and do some different cutting. So you could draw and then cut, or you can just take the scissors and start and see what happens. But what we're going to do is glue our pieces on to our paper. And there's really not a wrong way to do this. We're making what's called a collage. So you can use a glue stick, of course, but I want to talk about bottle glue if you have that. First, you need to twist open the orange piece on the top, and if it's closed, you'll see the white there. And if it's open, it's just the orange. And then we want to make sure we can hear it breathing. So I do that by squeezing it. I can hear some air. I know it's going to work. Now we have to shake, shake, shake upside down to get the glue to come down to the bottom. And then we're going to glue. Now, I always say dot, dot, not a lot. We don't want a big glue puddle mess on our picture. We want nice gluing. So dot, dot, not a lot, all around the edge. It's a good time to practice your glue dots. Then we carefully flip our paper over, decide where you want to put it, and hold it down and count to 10 so that we make sure it sticks. Now I have a little bit of extra glue here, but that's okay, it will dry. But we don't have a big glue puddle. That would not be good. Now if you can be extra careful, you could even just glue with a nice line around the edge. But we don't need any glue in the middle because it's just paper. We're not building a brick wall or anything like that. So I'm going to glue on all my paper scraps in different spots. And then I'm going to get a different color, cut out some more cool shapes. I'm going to try to do a swirl here. That would be a good challenge to see if you could do that. And then glue this on somewhere else. And I want you to overlap. That means to put a piece of paper on top of another one. So make sure you do some overlapping in your art today. Hold it down, make sure it's stuck flat. Okay. So you're going to keep on creating, and look, you can even use your scraps as things to glue on too, because they would look pretty cool together even. So I'm going to put some glue on my scraps even here and glue that down. Try to find maybe 3 different colors of paper that you could use to make your collage. Now, of course, your background could be any color you want, but I think the black really looks nice and it has those colors pop out when you put bright colors on top of it. So go ahead and make different layers, different shapes, different colors. We are cutting and gluing, making a collage today, just like the artist Henry Matisse. I cannot wait to see what yours look like.